Hey, first grade friends, and welcome back to another wonderful week of informative writing, where we will be teaching our reader all about different types of Native American homes. So let's take a look at another look at our writing prompt. It says, after reading Native American homes, we learned that Native American tribes built their houses based on their lifestyles and needs. Here's our job, friends. Our job is what's in bold, or there's letters that look bigger and a little bit more standing out at you. Choose a type of Native American home. Describe that home and how it was connected or related to the tribe's lifestyle. So before we start drawing a teaching picture or writing any sentences, I'm actually going to go back to my text to remind myself of the three different types of Native American homes that we learned about. We learned about teepees, we learned about wigwams, and we learned about longhouses. And I'm going to choose one of these three types of Native American homes to write about and to teach my reader about. And I'm actually really interested in teaching about longhouses because I grew up in upstate New York, which is where the Native American tribe called the Iroquois often lived. And they built longhouses. The Iroquois were known for longhouses. So I want to teach my reader about longhouses. And I can go back to my text and read a little bit more about longhouses to remind myself of what I learned. It says longhouses were built with poles and bark too, just like the wigwams. Longhouses were very large. 60 people could live in one. Imagine a house, friends, that fits 60 people in it. Longhouses took a lot of work to build. Tribes that lived in one place for long periods of time built longhouses. So now that I've decided that I want to teach my reader about longhouses, I want to start organizing some of my thinking about longhouses before I begin drawing and writing my sentences. So if you have already picked up your blue ELA spiral, then you'll have this planning page. If you don't have this planning page, you can just make your plan on a sheet of paper, friends. And you'll notice that I wrote down the type of home I want to write about, which is the longhouse. I then did a quick sketch or drawing of that house. I described that house with a couple of different bullet points. It's made of poles and bark. It holds up to 60 people. It's long, and narrow. And the reason why the people who built longhouses did was because it took a long time to build them, and they lived in one place for a long time. They didn't like to move around. So it made sense for them to build a house that would last for a long time, and they didn't have to move around. So now that I know that I want to write about longhouses, I can start drawing my teaching picture to show my reader what this Native American home looks like. So here's my rectangle on the top of my page. If you're using just a plain sheet of paper, you can use the top of your piece of paper and then leave the bottom for your sentences, for your writing. And I'm just going to go ahead and start sketching my longhouse. Now the word long is in longhouse. That's one of those compound words where you put two words together to make a bigger word. Longhouse, longhouse. And so I know that in my picture, if I'm going to draw and write about longhouses, it's got to be really long. I'm trying to make mine look 3D or three-dimensional and realistic. So I'm trying to make it look like it pops out of the page. But if you just want to do a flat rectangle on your paper, that's fine too. I remember reading that they used poles and bark to create longhouses. So I'm going to show the poles that would have been used. Again, this is just a sketch, and then I can go back in later with my colored pencils to make this look a little bit more realistic and give it some more detail. Here's my poles, but this is going to help my reader better understand what longhouses look like. And we'll do our poles along the top. There we go. There's my longhouse, and here's the door to the longhouse. Now I also want to show what the setting of this would be. You probably wouldn't have a longhouse in the middle of a road. You probably wouldn't see a longhouse in the middle of a city because we know our Native American tribes are living more in the wilderness. So I'm going to give my setting some trees and some grass so that my reader knows, oh, these houses, these were outdoors. A lot of the times that Native American people were moving from place to place outdoors. And finally, once I've got my sketch, I need to add my label. You have to label the type of house that you are teaching about so that your reader knows what it is. Longhouse, and I'm going to draw an arrow. Then I'm going to come back in, friends, with my colored pencils or markers or crayons, and I'm going to start realistically coloring in this picture. Now, I know I read in the text that longhouses are made out of bark and poles, and bark is usually grayish, brownish, tan, so I'm going to come through and I'm going to carefully color in my longhouse to make it look realistic. And when I'm done coloring in my longhouse, I can go back and start coloring in all of the green grass and my tree. Your job now, friends, is to select which of the 3 Native American homes you would like to teach your reader about. Are you going to teach your reader about teepees, wigwams, or longhouses? Start thinking about what it is you want to teach your reader about them, and then go ahead and draw your teaching picture, and be sure you add realistic coloring and labels.